It's baffled scholars for 2 millennia. It is a puzzle made of multi-dimensional elements, an enigma with roots that reach back to the dawning of time, perhaps before. Daniel explained part of it. Ezekiel and Isaiah had glimpses into it. John saw it all for the time of the end. That time is now. Join Derek and Sharon Gilbert on a journey that spans the course of history, from Eden to Mount Hermon, from Hermon to Babel, from Babel to Rome, from Rome to the cross, and from there to us. Biblical prophecy is coming true before your eyes, and to understand it, you must discern the times both then and now. It's time to unravel the threads of this all-encompassing prophetic paradox. It's time to unravel Revelation.
Welcome to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. Blinky Gilbert is still here. Same clothes, same eyes. But we promised last week that we were going to get into some politics, geopolitics and theopolitics. So we're very glad that you've chosen to join us in the barn once again, because I got to tell you, if you watch Derek's 5 and 10, you know this man has his finger on the pulse of what's going on, not only in the natural realm, but he's looking at the deities behind it in the supernatural realm. So we got to look at both sides to try to understand that through a glass darkly vision. It's about the best we can see. I mean, seriously.
Right.
When I had my eyes checked, now this is interesting, when I had my eyes checked a few days ago, not only did he say your meibomian glands are all infected, he took a look and he said, oh, and you've got cataracts on both your eyes. So my clear vision, which I thought was really clear, is not nearly as clear as I thought.
Well, your supernatural vision, your spirit vision is actually...
getting more acute.
Right.
The denser those cataracts get, and I'm grateful for it. So right now, as you're watching this, you're watching in our future. We are not yet to the 9th of Av. We talked about that last week, how the 9th of Av may have been in your past, our future. May have been a date that will live in infamy. A date that may kick off what we think is the false Gog and Magog war, where all the whole region comes against Jerusalem. But it's not yet. It's an already but not yet kind of thing. So what's going on?
Well, we've got a number of factors in play here. And again, some of this information may be obsolete by the time you see this, because as we're recording this before Tisha B'Av, which some Western intelligence agencies actually spoke to Sky News Arabia and said, we think that's the date, which would be the 12th of August. So again, this is in your past as you're watching this.
U.S. sources have been saying something very similar as well as the Brits.
Right.
If you want to keep up to date, always watch his 5 and 10. Always.
Well,
that's available at YouTube, Rumble, I think, but
YouTube,
also
Rumble.
on the Skywatch TV app. It's not on ours.
Roku and Apple TV as well. So trying to keep a close eye on what is happening over there. And the Iranians are going to respond, and they probably already have by the time you're watching this. It was interesting that Vladimir Putin, in speaking to the new Iranian president, was just asking, didn't even ask them not to respond. He basically said, avoid civilian casualties in Israel. Now, why would he say that? Because there are a lot of Russian expats, Jewish Russians, who have emigrated to, and this has been going on since the 1880s, when Russia really began persecuting the Jews.
The Russians own a big chunk of Jerusalem.
Right, they do. So, and there is a personal relationship between Benjamin Netanyahu and Vladimir Putin. They appear to be friends, or at least friendly to one another. Netanyahu was really brilliant in how he handled the situation in Syria, rather than Israel invading Syria when the Syrian civil war broke out and violence was taking place on the border with the Golan Heights. Instead of Israel invading, which would have brought a number of Arab nations together against Israel for invading Syrian territory, they still considered the Golan Heights part of Syria. Netanyahu flew to Moscow, talked to Putin. Putin essentially sent troops. He backs Bashar al-Assad. Bear in mind that
The U.S. backs the rebels.
Yeah, and it's very strange how we're trying to play both sides. I say we, I mean our government is trying to play both sides in that conflict.
Historically, that's what we do.
Right. Assad and his supporters, Assad is an Alawite, which is a sect of Shia Islam, and they're in the minority in Syria, which is why they align with Hezbollah, which is also a Shia militia group. Iran is a Shia-controlled nation, majority Shia. There are also a majority of Shias in Iraq. Saddam Hussein was a Sunni. He was a strong man whose coalition was Christians, the Sunni minority, and Yazidis and others who, like in Syria, again, a minority coalition was keeping the Sunni majority down. In Iraq, it was the other way around, a Sunni minority keeping the Shia majority down. So Russia, backing Assad, essentially sent troops into Syria to put down the rebels whom we were backing. This led to some uncomfortable situations where, in one incident, U.S. Marines took down a unit of the Wagner group, which were the so-called independent mercenaries who were essentially working on behalf of the Kremlin. But thankfully, that didn't turn into a wider shooting war. But Netanyahu essentially was able to achieve some measure of stability in Syria by getting Putin to go ahead and back the rebels in Syria. Now, Putin has been sending military hardware, reportedly, a massive airlift of weaponry to Iran. This was in the early part of August, while at the same time asking the Iranians to avoid civilian casualties. He understands, Putin is smart enough to understand that in that part of the world, exercising restraint, which is what the United States has been calling for, the Western allies, UK, NATO, calling on all sides for restraint. In that part of the world, if you exercise restraint, that's seen as a sign of weakness. If somebody hits you, you have to smack him back hard enough to knock out his whole family, or he doesn't respect you. That's just the way the minds work in that part of the world, whether it's Arab, Persian, or Turk. There are so many moving parts in that part of the world, and I think we in the West don't understand them well enough. And I'm not claiming to be an expert, but having talked to some who are expert in that part of the world, you've got Jews as a small minority versus Arabs who are divided between Sunni and Shia, Persians who are mainly Shia, Turks who are mainly Sunni. But the Sunni Arabs are also divided between those who, like the Muslim Brotherhood and its military wing, Hamas, want to reestablish the caliphate, which is Turkish, which is why Egyptians and Saudis don't want the Muslim Brotherhood active in their areas, because they want the Turks to rule Islam, where the Arabs want to control Islam.
Mr. Gilbert.
Yes, Mrs. G.
Let's look at the Theopolitics then.
Yes.
Because the geopolitics is very confusing, and you cannot always figure out why this country or this sect goes against this one, and why they don't get along. In the spirit realm, we talked last week about the King of Kings of the fallen realm, Satan.
Mm-hmm.
He wears all the crowns, he sits on the big chair, and he overlooks all of the other, perhaps watcher class angels who were sent down post-Babel to help the individual language groups. Well, it may still be language groups today, but it also may be, if you look at the way a group of worshipers come together, the body for that particular deity. If we are the body of Christ as Christians, then these fallen realm deities, some of them angels, perhaps watcher class, some of them demons, who are working for the angels, or maybe working against the angels. There is warfare in the heavenlies all the time. And I would argue, if we look at the Old Testament, how you see the king of Greece, that's a spirit entity.
Prince of Greece.
Prince of Greece, come against the prince of Persia, again, another spirit entity. It looks to me like the prince of Persia wants to take down the others in the region and maybe go for the big chair. Because at one time, the shahs, the leaders, the whatever you wanted to call them, the kings of Persia called themselves king of kings.
Right. And that was a common term that was used in ancient Mesopotamia, but it was...
I think it's whoever gets the big chair for a little while.
Right,
It's
right.
like a game of musical chairs.
Game
with,
of Thrones,
with
if you will.
weapons.
Yeah. But you're right. I think there's a hint of how this conflict is played out in the spirit realm, who, when the prince of Greece took down the prince of Persia, this is referenced in Daniel chapter 10, where the angel who came to deliver a message to Daniel said, the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, but Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I was left there with the kings of Persia.
Yes.
Now, the kings of Persia, those are the Malki or Malakim, which is a plural term. It can mean kings plural, but it was also a term used by the pagans going back many, many centuries before the emergence of Israel as an independent kingdom, for a group of underworld entities, essentially the Rephaim spirits, the spirits of the Nephilim destroyed in the flood. These were known to the others, to other cultures in the ancient world around ancient Israel. So it's possible that when Daniel is told by this angel, presumably Gabriel, that he was battling and contending with the prince of Persia, that these kings of Persia were actually demonic entities of Persia who were loyal to that prince. And then the prince of Greece came, I will return to fight against the prince of Persia, and when I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come.
Yes. What was it they were called in the ancient world? Suzerains?
Yeah.
The sub-kings? You represented
Satraps.
the big king, satraps.
Yeah.
So these demonic entities are representative of the big king of kings, but they're rulers themselves.
Yeah.
And if they don't get along, let's face it, they're rebels.
They're fighting with one another.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I think they are. And Prince of Greece came in, knocked out Prince of Persia. Later on, the Prince of Rome came in.
Well, I would suggest that the prince of Greece and the prince of Rome are one and the same.
Oh, the
Because-
Greco-Roman king?
Right. Yeah, I would argue that that prince of Greece was the storm god Baal, Zeus, Jupiter, who just moved his kingdom further west as the center of power moved further west. This is speculation, by
Yeah.
the way. There's nothing in the Bible that tells us this.
Well, the one reason would be if you look at the statue, that you get the iron.
Iron mixed with
Legs.
miry clay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if that is Rome,
Legs of iron, right.
Yeah.
Rome.
and I think that's an apt way of describing Rome, because they were well known for creating roads and marching all throughout what it was considered the world at the time. At that point, the Bible doesn't refer necessarily to the Western Hemisphere, but it might, in that land divided by rivers. We don't know. That's a bunny trail. We can't have that in the middle of this.
You know, it's really interesting because we've done this in our Bible study, which you can find at our website, gilberthouse.org, our weekly Bible study podcast, the Gilbert House Fellowship, as we went through the book of Daniel, which we will get back to at some point.
And I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, because we know a little more now than we did our first trip.
We've learned a lot about it. Yep.
Yeah. The angel tells Daniel, I will tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. There is none who contends by my side against these, meaning the prince of Persia and the kings, or the Malakim, the underworld entities, the Rephaim of Persia, except Michael, your prince. And then chapter 11, verse 1, bearing in mind that in the original manuscripts, there were no chapter and verse divisions. And as for me, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. So this angel apparently stood up to confirm Darius the Mede. Why would Darius need this supernatural support?
The Lord raises up kings and he brings them down.
Exactly. So who is the prince of Persia? If the prince of Greece, the prince of Rome, not mentioned in the Bible, the prince of Greece is, would the prince of Rome, or prince of Persia rather, be another entity like
I think
Marduk?
so. Very possibly. We also have the Mithra
Mithra?
set, which is a part of Zoroastrianism.
Who the Iranians, by the way, Iranian youth are returning to Zoroastrianism because
Isn't that interesting?
it is. And again, this gets into the various factions within Islam that we don't, in the West, really understand well, but they're young Iranians saying that, look, our heritage is Zoroaster and Ahura Mazda, who
Yes.
some scholars believe is just another name for Marduk, but also Mithra, as you say. But they're returning to Zoroastrianism because they see Islam as a foreign religion brought to Persia and imposed on Persians by the Arabs. And they find it offensive that their holy book is written in Arabic and not Farsi, and that they're following this Arabic God. So that is an interesting little theopolitical development happening behind the scenes, that perhaps the Prince of Persia is rising against this entity, the God of Islam, Allah.
Okay, question for you. Allah would have been the god of the Ottoman Empire,
Yep.
and he rules over little pieces of it that are left standing. Who's Allah?
Well, in my book, Bad Moon Rising, I argue that Allah was a simulacrum, a creation by the old gods of Mesopotamia. I have since come to believe that Allah, based on the etymology, al-ilah, meaning the God, that's Arabic, the similarity to the name El-Lil, the Akkadian Enlil, El-Ilu, meaning God of gods, that's who we're looking at there. It is El-Lil, it is Enlil, it is Saturn, Kronos, Molech. I think that's the God. And we, in fact, ran a program here recently arguing that Allah is Molech. So I think that's who we're dealing with, an entity who is currently locked up in the abyss, who gets out in Revelation 9 when the abyss is opened.
Okay, question for you, and then we'll go to the break. And you can think about this through the break if you want to. Since Shemyaza is in Tartarus and cannot be on earth to sit on that throne,
Shemyaza, Molech, yep.
who is his representative? We'll come
that's
back from the break, and you can
good
give
question.
us your thoughts.
Yes,
on it.
that, and I finally looked up the 186-mile distance of
We got it.
the 1600 stadia. That will be revealed when Unraveling Revelation continues. Archaeologists call it the world's oldest temple, Gobekli Tepe. But who were the guardians of Gobekli?
I love that title. In fact, it's the title of Dr. Aaron Judkin's book, and he gets into that information. He is one of the world experts on Gobekli Tepe. There aren't very many of them.
There aren't, and he's one of the few who will take a Christian look at Gobekli Tepe and try to analyze the spiritual forces behind this mysterious site. Why did our Stone Age ancestors spend so much time building this specifically for ritual purposes?
And then burying it.
And then burying it.
It is a message in stone, and I tell you what, hundreds of archaeologists and experts have been trying to decipher this for a long time. I think Aaron may be onto something.
Right. This is a 60-minute conversation that Aaron and I had about Gobekli Tepe. You can get it now at our special introductory price, 20% off. But this special offer is only available at our online store. What lies beneath? 20% off now at gilberthouse.org/store. Welcome back to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert with my GHTV coffee mug, which you can get from the Gilbert House store, gilberthouse.org/store. You'll see the link to, is it Light Hive?
It's Light Hive Creations.
Kenny C's fiance, Gidget.
Yep.
Oh, she's a genius.
Yeah, so she does our shirts. She does GHTV shirts as well as these mugs, but also Red Wing Saga shirts. If you're a reader and a fan of Sharon's supernatural thrillers, the Red Wing Saga, you can proudly display your enjoyment of those novels with a Red Wing Saga shirt. You'll find the link to get the mugs and the shirts at gilberthouse.org/store.
And there will be more shirts coming. We're
Yes.
thinking about doing Grace and Glory.
Yeah, Team Grace,
t-shirts.
Team Glory for our rescue dogs. Also, while you're there, there's some wonderful coffee and freeze-dried non-GMO foods from Simply Clean Foods. The links are there at the landing page in the store as well. It takes you directly to Simply Clean Foods. Their coffee, which we have tasted, is delicious. The food, those freeze-dried fruits, like the freeze-dried strawberries.
So good. All of it is really, really good. We encourage you to go and take a look there, because this isn't just food that you're going to store for 20 years just in case. This is food you can eat today, and you know it's nice food. It's clean food.
Right.
It's not going to harm your body.
Hence the name, Simply Clean Foods. Chance Gibson, we've come to know him over the years through appearing at conferences, usually the Watchman conferences, and he has launched this as a way to show that you can have the long-term shelf safe food that you can save for emergencies, but it's also good enough to serve up on a regular basis.
Just get it shipped every month.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, let me start with the information I promised previously, and finally looked up after the second 1600 stadia, blood up to the level of a horse's bridle for 1600 stadia, which is about 184 miles when you convert it from Jerusalem, if that is the location where this sickle is put in and the grapes are harvested, trampled out in the winepress of the wrath of God. That would essentially go as far north as Tripoli. That's north of Beirut in Lebanon. It would encompass pretty much the entire Sinai Peninsula to the south and to the west. To the east, it would cover most of the country of Jordan, modern-day Jordan.
Wow.
So that is quite a distance. I mean, there's only just a
big area.
little area in the far northeast of Jordan, that part that sticks out into Arabia, Iraq, and Syria, would be excluded from that. But it would go down as far south as the Red Sea. So everything in the Arava, Petra, that whole region would all be included. The Negev, the Gaza Strip, everything. It would essentially go to the border between Egypt and the Sinai Peninsula. So that is a huge area if you're talking about that being the area covered by blood to the height of a horse's bridle. So the idea of who Molech's representatives would be, Molech, Allah, Shemaiah, the leader of that rebellion in Genesis 6, who we believe was the entity called Molech, demanded child sacrifice, like his later iterations, Baal, Haman, Kronos, Saturn. Kronos had the nickname Kronos Technophagos, which means Kronos, child eater.
Possibly also Baal Peor.
Baal Peor, we think. I think the reason, and this is something that didn't occur to me at first, but when you think about it, that according to Peter and Jude, this entity and his minions, his colleagues, have been condemned to Tartarus. And that's specific in 2 Peter 2, verse 4. The word translated hell is actually Tartarus. Satan is still roaming the earth. You know, we're warned about him that he's a lion seeking whom he may devour. So he's not, cute and cuddly, the little flannel board red devil with horns and a pitchfork. He is very seriously a serious threat. He's leading the end times rebellion against God.
He's persuasive.
And he's very persuasive. He can appear as an angel of light, according to Paul. But these other guys from Genesis 6, they're locked up in chains in gloomy darkness, according to Peter and Jude.
Exactly.
Suggesting that they were an existential threat to humanity. It's like Satan, the accuser, the Satan, is trying to get us to condemn ourselves by following him into rebellion. This other entity, Shemaiah, Molech, Allah, is trying to get us to kill one another.
Just to get rid of all humans.
To get rid of all humans. In fact, in the pre-flood era, his hybrid children, the monstrous Nephilim, nearly destroyed humanity, according to the book of 1 Enoch. Their spirits, because they were hybrid, part angel, part human, part divine, part mortal, were not allowed into the typical place of the afterlife for humanity, which was Sheol.
Well, when their human part died, the spirit part wasn't allowed in heaven, wasn't allowed to go to
Sheol or wherever.
Wasn't condemned that way. So condemned to roam the earth.
And torment humanity.
Demons, yes.
Right. So.
And they're powerful.
I would
don't dismiss them.
Right. Now, not as powerful as the Watchers or the Watcher class angels themselves.
They're like puppies to them.
Right.
But they are not like puppies to us.
No, much more powerful than we are. We do not take on the mantle of demon slayer. That is the power of Jesus Christ and the power in his name, which is an aspect of his personality, not just saying the word.
Exactly.
That they are subject to him. But compared to these angelic beings, they are nowhere near in that class. But they are his minions. And like minions who will pass messages between a gang leader or a mafia boss behind bars in prison to the outside to control action on the streets. I think those minions are still conducting operations on his behalf. I think Satan, though, is his rival for control of the world, and that Inanna, the great prostitute, the whore of Babylon, is another rival for ultimate power. They think somehow they're going to knock Yahweh off his throne and take his place, but they're fighting with each other for control.
I think definitely Inanna is setting up the world kingdom. That Shemyaza is going, once it's all done, okay, now let me out.
Right,
I'm ready.
And add to this mix Leviathan, Chaos, who we believe is the spirit that will indwell the human we call Antichrist. Another rival for this throne. Leviathan was subdued by Genesis 1 verse 2, and somehow Satan believes he is going to control chaos, which is kind of a dichotomy. It's a what's the word I'm looking for?
You can't control the lack of control.
Yeah, it's a contradiction in terms. But
It's sort of like when you get a package in the mail and all these things are, you take it out and you go, oh, this is great. Oh, it's not what I ordered. So you've got to put it all back in and ship it back.
the pieces never fit the same
goes
way.
back in.
Right. But he will be allowed out. This is the for that period of 7 years, and Satan hoping to use this entity to achieve his own ends.
Hold on. Who's being allowed out for 7 years?
The Antichrist. I think. We don't know how
This
long
may
he's
be
going to get.
A human who is indwelt
A human indwelled by the Spirit.
for 7 years.
Yes,
Okay.
the human Antichrist. Will he be out at the beginning of the 7-year Great Tribulation? We don't know for sure. I lean towards that understanding. He may even be active prior to that 7-year final Great Tribulation
And if
period.
there's a 7-year, and this is why it's thought that there's an Antichrist who begins day one because of this assumed peace treaty and allowing the Jews to then sacrifice. They have their own place of worship. Everybody gets along. And that's why I think at the end of this fake Gog and Magog war, the fake Armageddon, that this deity, this entity comes in, this person who's indwelt by perhaps the spirit of chaos,
Right.
that he says, I've got this. And he is charismatic and he solves problems no other politician ever managed. He gets this peace going and then he sets up his kingdom in Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem, right. And because he has brought peace, what appears to be peace, to Israel, there are those looking for the end times Moshiach who will recognize him as their savior. But again, we believe that Gog and Magog, that war, ends at Armageddon, which we believe
The real one.
which is still to come, still in the future. This is a deception that is intended to enthrone the spirit of Antichrist on God's Har Moed, the Mount of Assembly, which is what this war is all about ultimately.
So Theopolitics.
Theopolitics, driving the geopolitics, what's happening behind it. That's why Paul wrote, we wrestle not against flesh and blood.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. This is Unraveling Revelation.
Unraveling Revelation is a viewer-supported outreach of Gilbert House Ministries. Contact us through our websites or drop us a line at P.O. Box 78, Crane, Missouri 65633.